Now, the really cool thing with API Gateway is that you can have logging, monitoring, and tracing. So it's integrated with CloudWatch Logs, and we just need to enable it, but we need to enable CloudWatch Logging at the stage level, and then we can override it on a per API basis if you want error logs, debug logs, info logs, etc. The log can contain information about the request and response body, which is super helpful if we want to debug some things. Also, we have CloudWatch metrics to see how each stage responds, if there's any errors, and we can enable detailed metrics to get even more metrics. And then the really cool thing is that now there's X-ray integration, so you can enable tracing at the API gateway level to get extra information about requests made from the API gateway to your Lambda function, to your DynamoDB baby, for example. And so it's a really powerful integration, the API gateway plus the AWS Lambda tracing, that gives you really the full picture about how your requests go through your entire system. So let's have a look how we can enable these. So in my dev stage, I'm able to go to logs tracing and enable CloudWatch logs, access logging, X-ray tracing, and so on. So for CloudWatch logs, I'll say, okay, I want to enable that, and I want to have info log level, and I want to log full request response data. So this is a bit tricky if you have sensitive information in your request or response, so be careful with this option. And then maybe you want to have detailed metrics, access logging, or X-ray tracing. Now I can go and click on save changes, but it won't work. The thing is, I first need to go to settings in my API gateway, and I need to provide a CloudWatch log ARN for my API gateway. So I need to go into IAM. So let's do this together. Let's go to IAM, and I create a role. I'll create a new role, and this is for an AWS service, which is API gateway. So this is my use case. And this allows API Gateway to push logs to CloudWatch logs. Click on Next Permissions. I will choose Amazon API Gateway push to CloudWatch logs, so it already knows what to do. Oops, I'll just click on this policy, click on Next Review. The role name is called API Gateway, and click on Create Role. Now we have the role API Gateway that's been created. We can copy the role ARN using this copy button, and we can paste it right here. So now we're in the settings, we're providing API Gateway with a CloudWatch log ARN. Click on Save, and now API Gateway can send logs to CloudWatch. Let's go back to our pet store, stages, click on Dev, logs tracing. Now we can click on Enable log for CloudWatch info and enable X-ray tracing, and we'll log the full request and response data. Click on Save Changes, and now my stage is fully integrated with logs. I'll just refresh the page to make sure. And if I go back to logs tracing, yes, everything is still ticked, so it's working. Now I go back to my invoke URL, and I'm going to invoke maybe the /pets API, refresh this a few times. And so what we expect is that if we go to services and we go to CloudWatch, from CloudWatch, we're going to logs on the left-hand side. We can get a API Gateway execution log, and we have an API Gateway welcome. So let's just refresh this real quick. Okay, let's have a look at what we want to have. Maybe this execution log is what we're looking into. And so we have a lot of log streams available for us already. But here, by clicking on this, we can see that we have the /pets resource that was requested. And then it gives us all the information and log we get, including the response body before transformation, and so on. So we get a lot of different information in CloudWatch. Now, if we want to do something fun and go to X-ray, so I'll type on X-ray and see if in my service map, I see my API Gateway. And yes, in my API Gateway, I can see that my client has talked to my API Gateway stage /dev. And what happened is that it went and talked to my pet store demo remote endpoint HTTP. And we can see the response time of this endpoint versus the API Gateway, which is kind of cool because now we can see that the API Gateway has given me a lot of information about what my APIs do. We can do something else just for fun and go to my first API, stages, dev, logs tracing, and I will also enable X-ray tracing here just for fun. Now I will invoke my dev API, so I'll go to dev, and I will also go to /dev/houses, just to have two different APIs being hit, and that's good. Now, if we go to X-ray and we refresh that service map, so after a few minutes of refreshing, I actually can see a lot of cool information now. In my API Gateway, I can see that my dev stage has different API Lambda function it can call. So there's this root get or houses get, And then we can see how each Lambda function calls its own little Lambda function. So this is Lambda service, this is Lambda function. And so here we're really able to see the whole service map through X-ray of how our APIs behave. And so obviously if this Lambda functions were talking to DynamoDB, we would see DynamoDB here, and that makes things really cool. If we go to traces and click on, for example, dev houses, and click on this URL, right here we're able to see all the trace list. I'll click on one of them, and now we're able to see exactly the breakdown of the latency. So the first API call took 20 milliseconds, but 15 milliseconds were spent on Lambda, 8 milliseconds on that service, 1 millisecond on executing the function, and so on. So it's really, really cool, I think, to have X-ray integration with API Gateway and Avis Lambda, because we can start seeing a lot of different patterns, which I think are quite useful when you start having very, very big applications. So I hope that was helpful for monitoring and logging, and I will see you in the next lecture.